So, good morning, everybody. We begin our panel discussion about technologies, the future. It's going to be mostly an English-speaking panel, so anyone needs simultaneous interpreting, it's available. Please use the headsets. We have brilliant speakers today. And let me present them to you. I'll start with Bill. So Bill Reichert, I'll be presenting you in Russian because speakers know everything about you. So Bill Reichert, partner of Pegasus Tech Ventures, is a Californian successful venture fund. Bill Reichert has 10-hour difference with our time zone, so let's support his bravery with this jet lag.
Times, traveling both ways. And California, that's pretty far away from Ukraine, so thank you. Bill управляет.
So Bill manages investments in the U.S. from headquarters in Silicon Valley. He managed Pegasus investments in AI, robotics, quantum computing, neuromorphics. Don't ask me what it is. Ask Bill. Space, airspace, science, life. So he's the chief expert in Startup World Cup, a platform that supports and unites ecosystems, startup ecosystems all over the world. So the next, I would like to present Jan-Peter Deyuk, regional manager of Microsoft Ukraine. Director of American Chamber of Commerce with more than 20 years experience in IT, digital transformation, and sales. Sebastian Tolstoy, president of Ericsson in Eastern Europe, Central Asia. Sebastian is the president of Ericsson company in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Development PyG, Internet of Things, cloud technologies, digitalization, partners of Ericsson, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Georgia, and other regions and countries. And even more, let me disclose a small personal detail. We have his surname. He's really a descendant of the very Tolstoy that you all probably know.
Be really perfect. You will do your best. You dream.
Nadezhda Vasilyeva, director of Institute of Digital Transformation. She's a graduate. Yes, please give a round of applause. She's a graduate of MIT in the US in digital transformation, PhD in economics, and master's in international law. There's a long list. And as Anglo-Saxons say, the last but not the least, Kostas Salvaras, Philip Morris in Ukraine, the CEO, Philip Morris Ukraine. He is responsible also for the work of the company in Georgia, Moldova, Armenia. He's been for 20 years in the company. He was launching total transformation, and I heard what Kostas was going to tell about today. And Philip Morris is the biggest cigarette producer. They are planning to completely ban or go away from their production. And that was a little bit of a spoiler, but you will hear the rest from Kostas. Our 90 minutes of talks will be split into 3 parts. First part, since we have representatives from different industries, you have an opportunity to tap and understand what's happening with technologies, what are the expectations in the next decade from each of them. We will have up to 10 minutes for each speaker telling what's happening in their segment. The second part is we're going to talk about Ukrainian context, and we're going to talk about how that all correlates with Ukraine and many other things are going to be discussed in this block. The third part is Q&A. There's a chat bot. We'll be thankful for questions. We'll be selecting some questions to discuss. Sorry for in advance for not making it to discuss all the questions. Sebastian.
Thank you, Andrei. I'll go back in time a little bit more than 10 years. I lived in Japan, in Tokyo. We had just deployed a new 3G network. And I remember my first phone. It was a fantastic Sony Ericsson phone, very small screen, and has a physical keyboard. And it was really designed for one application, for email. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I think this is the height of technology evolution. And I remember there was already then a lot of questions, why do we need 4G? Fast forwarding now 10 plus years, we know that 4G has been a fantastic innovation platform. We have created probably some of the highest value companies based on the 4G technology and creating app ecosystems and a lot of values, cars, social networks, fintech, other industries have been completely transformed through the deployment of 4G technologies. And now we are standing again in front of the next big revolutionary step in technology evolution, and that is, of course, about 5G. And 5G is actually already here. There are more than 160 networks already deployed worldwide, and I'm proud to say that 97 of them are deployed by Ericsson in all parts of the world. And we estimate that by the end of this year, there will be 580 million subscribers, 5G subscribers. So that's more than 500 million 5G subscribers. And that means that we are currently experiencing a growth of 1 million new 5G subscribers every day. And the same thing as with 4G, we can't even imagine what will come with 5G. But what we know with 5G, that it is a technology that is optimized primarily for the enterprise and for the industry. The previous technologies were more for you and me to communicate in different ways and connect to the internet and using new type of services. But 5G is developed for the industries. And you see a lot of great examples here of robots and drones and so on that all will use the connectivity technology of 5G. And here in Ukraine, I think we're going to talk more about that. Your main industries like mining, manufacturing, and agriculture that will benefit from 5G technology. But there are also a number of other interesting cases that we see are developing now. And I would just like to spend a short minute on the car industry. I will not talk about self-driving cars. For many people, that is too futuristic, even though I think it will happen. But the car, as of today, is already becoming a computer with software on 4 wheels. I read a very interesting interview with one of the CEOs of a leading European car manufacturer. And he said that the car will not any longer be at its best when it's leaving the production plant. It will actually continuously improve over its lifetime. And that is thanks, of course, to the software, but mainly also then to the connectivity. Because the software and with artificial intelligence and so on, we learn about the driving behaviors and what your preferences are on how you brake and accelerate your cars and so on. It's going to measure that with millions of other cars, and you will have continuous upgrade of the software that optimizes the car. And when you have millions of those type of cars, of course, you also need a very powerful connectivity technology, and that is 5G, right? Another very interesting concept that is being developed is digital twins. Naверное, цифровые близнецы. Yeah? Yeah. So what is that then? Well, That is when you make a digital replica of a physical environment. So you could have a factory where all the parts of the process is being measured with sensors and being connected. And you make a digital or virtual environment where you can actually replicate that whole production flow. And you can try and model different type of optimization parameters and immediately implement that also in the physical environment. We have done a very interesting case in Italy where we have made a digital copy or a digital twin of the port of Livorno. It's a huge container port. And of course, for architecture of city design and so on, you can use this type of concept. Now, so what I'm trying to say is that the connectivity and the mobile network infrastructure, and especially 5G, is the innovation platform for a lot of great things that we can't even imagine today what they will be with 5G. But there are a lot of studies that show a clear correlation between mobile broadband penetration and adoption and GDP growth. So, for example, London School of Economics say that for every 10% of mobile broadband adoption, you get almost 1% of GDP growth. There was an interesting discussion yesterday in the panel with the Prime Minister. I think you saw that it was very lively. It was a lot of tough questions. And there was an interesting comparison of Ukraine and Poland. And of course, a lot of different reasons why there is a different development when it comes to GDP growth. But from our industry point of view, there is one big difference, and that is that Poland deployed 3G and 4G 11 and 8 years earlier than Ukraine. So my hope is only that 5G will not come in 10 years in Ukraine, but that the operator and the regulator, that they talk together and discuss and agree when is the optimal time for Ukraine. And we are ready to support that. With 5G, we're here to make the unimaginable possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Sebastian. You know, human brain hears what it hears. So mine heard that you've said 5G and flying cars. My question, when we could expect, please? Can we tomorrow, considering traffic jams, which happen in
Yeah,
Kyiv?
no, but I think, of course, you will need antennas tilted upwards, right? But, of course, with a lot of drones and things flying in over the city, you will have to have a good control system. And I think 5G will be the answer for that as well, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. Nadia, please.
Окей, я попробую на русском.
Right. I will speak first in Russian, then I participate in discussion in English. So usually when technological panels are when there's a panel discussion, often it's difficult to understand terminology. In the last 4 years, although I've been in 20 years in tech, testing, interpreting, can you hear? So digital economy is the modern trend that drives change in world economy. And if you see the main trends that were tied to the previous industrial revolutions, they were all through opening the trade, that falling down barriers between trade. But at the same time, you were limited in your mobility, the visas that were there. In the second industrial revolution, it wasn't there. You can move freely, but still you had some problems with trade. There were big limitations or caps on national economies. Now we have all these opportunities, both trade and mobility, but now we have the pandemic. And suddenly new challenges and new requirements emerge, and we can talk about that. But all these economic changes, they're very much depending on the type of technologies that we're unrolling. You know, you've seen the book, Why Some Nations Win and Some Lose. The main message is that those nations, those countries that won, they mostly found some breakthrough technologies and use it to move forward quickly. So talking about trends, I would more from the social trends that change through technologies and how will they continue changing depending on these technologies. That's what I would talk about. So we're talking about a big number of like big trends, big data trend, AI trend, infrastructure trend, and you ask, so what do I have? What do I get from this? How can I use it? Let's start from IoT, Internet of Things, $14.5 trillion forecast size of this economy. So let's start by saying 30 billion devices. 30 billion devices already plugged in, and each day 5 new million. So it's about multiplication of devices. So it can be compared with oil industry. Oil tycoons said that oil is nothing without processing. When we get to process the oil, then we get gasoline, etc. Value-added products. The same with data. If you just stack data on top of blocks and blocks and data, they just lie there. It's useless data. You're just stacking redundant stuff, and you're paying to store it. So the next question, of course, tied to the generation of data with manifold multiplication of data. It's the AI, something so powerful that has to process it. It's one thing if we as humans will sit down, even if we're super mathematicians and are experienced, yeah, we can apply some brain power. But if we talk about streaming data, completely, constantly changing, you need some more modern tools with a higher throughput. And this tool should also learn, so that you don't have to stand and manage it manually. But then everybody says, oh, okay, then the AI will capture us all, the economy will be ruled by AI. That's a big question then. If we talk about data analytics, there are 3 factors. Analytics has mathematics, cognitive analytics, or cognitive approach is when you try to get insights and put them together, and then you apply either your judgment, your intuition, your experience, your logical reason, then you do you generate some outcomes. And this is about critical thinking. Why is it important right now to instill it everywhere in schools? And thirdly, it's an emotional component. So emotional component, how what AI cannot do, like learning to be or to think like women. It's a joke. So AI can learn endlessly, but 2 factors, cognitive and emotional, are very hard to reproduce, and it's ages and ages maybe until the moment where AI might have a glimpse or understanding of what emotions are and how we manage that. So next thing about production, there was an interesting discussion yesterday. $1 trillion of GDP Ukraine, how do we achieve it? I would like to reflect on that a little bit. In my point of view, there was a good idea that Ukraine has to drive forward production. Rothschild Foundation said, well, just open your black and gray economy, open it up, and you have the $1 trillion. Put it out of the shadow. Yeah, but let's talk about production. What is the production of the future, manufacture of the future? First of all, it's not about product. Products are dead. Nobody needs products. If you look at the world economy nowadays, the revenues from production is miserable. It's close to zero. So you're competing all over the world. If we say let's cover our national economy by some products, it's unrealistic because no world products, competitive products, are not produced in one country. You have to understand. You have to build ecosystem. That's what wins. Ecosystem where the partners give away for outsource part of your production to someone else, maybe even ideas that found these production. Then you increase efficiency all over the world through fair competition. You can raise the competitive edge of your production. Secondly, there's the intellectualization of production. Your products are growing around services. Nobody needs just the product. Everybody needs some benefit from the product. So if it's about benefit, what do I get from a coffee machine? I get a coffee. Somebody has to do it. What do I get out of iron? The ironing of your clothes. Somebody has to do it. So this is where we start making money on technology by providing services. How does this industry grow? You look at the top Fortune listed companies, the main intellectual part was created with Ukrainian IT products. Our Ukrainian outsources, they're called Americans because the startups moved from Ukraine to the US. But if you look at the share of the intellectual capital, a lot of it generates from Ukraine. So, not taking too much of your time, just drawing my first conclusion. First of all, you have to look at trends to understand by understanding that it's not just usable like commodity. You have to process it, value added. Industry and production becomes global and intellectual, and you have to be part of the ecosystem. And thirdly, if we are afraid to lose our job because the robots will beat us to it, and think that you will hide in production or public sector, that's not true. And we have another discussion later maybe about that. So last thing the point that I want to say, we are as a research institute, we did a big survey at the start of this year about types of economy. We joined this as a partner system to a big study of alternative. So they outlined 7 types of digital technologies in the world. Ukraine was, we can be proud of our country. We're number 3, service powerhouse. So we're servicing big, powerful economies in the world. Yeah, we want to become a number 1 innovation hub, but so far it's not achievable. But number 3 is also very good. We're in the same class with Finland, India, Egypt, Indonesia. So we're in a great club, and we don't need to be shy about that. So let's talk about it later if you want. Nadia, thank you. I just wanted to add one statistical fact. This week, I switched to English.
With a leader of one of the student societies, and he has his subjective number in terms of preferences of youth getting out of universities these days in Ukraine. So for 65%, that's his subjective number, dream job is a job in IT. That's Ukrainian specifics, just to confirm some of your data which you've shared.
Just short, keep you some back. We made this research for Ukrainian society, whole society, first quarter of this year after pandemic or within the pandemic. And we asked all different type of people about how they perceive themselves as the digital literacy people. 47%, only 47% said that they feel that they have a basic digital knowledge skills. And it's interesting that 46% among unemployment people said they don't need digital skills. It is not impacting on their future at all.
No connection, right? Thank you. Jan Peter.
Thank you very much. So Sebastian talked about how to connect everything. Nadia talked about how are we going to transform the world? And I would like to share with you in a couple of minutes how we're going to do that. So Microsoft actually is enabling every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. And today, if we look at the technologies that we have at hand, we'll see that a lot of those technologies have the potential to really disrupt the world as we know it significantly in the next 10 years. We only have a few minutes today, and that's why I would like to highlight one technology that we believe is going to transform the world as much as the smartphone did 15 years ago. And this is what we call the cloud platform, cloud compute platform. We don't talk about infrastructure, we don't talk about computers and everything. It is, to understand the cloud platform, we have to think about what did smartphone do with our lives when we got the first one in our hands. You know, we were so happy that in the previous phone, that we could store a phone number and a name, right? And then we could see who was calling us. That was like awesome. Now, what do we use our phone for? For calling? Only a few %. We use it for completely different things. We are connecting in a completely different way. And what made this phone the tool that you got in your hands that allowed you to get access to all these different kinds of services or apps? That is exactly the same thing that the cloud compute platform is going to do for organizations. So if we deep dive a little bit more on this, what we see is that this cloud platform will provide organizations, and you as well, with services, apps, you've not seen before, or that were very hard to get access to. So this platform will enable our customers, you, startups, mid-sized companies, big companies, to get access to services that suddenly become compliant and affordable. Let me give you a couple examples. So we have, like in a smartphone, a lot of services or apps, we call them apps there, but we like to talk about services. We have a lot of services that actually come with the platform. Well, in this case, we talk about cognitive, and Nadia, you mentioned it. So what can we understand? What actually does it mean, cognitive services? Cognitive services will bring into the hands in an affordable way, like translation from one language to the other. We have neural cognitive services that actually go from text to speech. And neural cognitive services actually take into account the context of the text and have a different pronunciation depending on the context. And that is all available at the moment. If you want to build that, or you want to buy that separately, as an organization or an individual, either you cannot afford it. But now, it resides, it lives in the cloud, and you can just go and consume it. And that is how cloud compute platforms are going to change the world. Because it will provide all these kind of services to all the organizations and all the, despite they are small or big, doesn't matter anymore. The other thing that I totally love about this concept and what is going on at the moment is the fact that it's democratized. It doesn't differentiate between small and large companies, but as well, you don't need expensive or scarce specialists to go and implement it, or go and manage it, go and drive these applications. And it is very important because it makes it even more accessible to go and use it. And the last point I would like to mention here is the fact that because these cloud compute platforms typically are designed with security in mind, with regulatory compliance in mind, it means that also these apps come with this additional security. They come already available with regulatory compliance. So this is for me the overview of compute cloud platform that actually will be the basis of a change that we cannot oversee at the moment. It is up to the companies and it is up to the organizations to go and leverage this to define the future. Do I have a few minutes more? Let me give you one example. First of all, I love Ukraine, as most of you know. I'm living here 3 years now. There's a couple of very important industries that are even more important outside of the country as well. So first of all, we all know IT industry is awesome. Ukraine is really important in IT industry. We have manufacturing, that is insane. Then we have agriculture as well. And I would like to highlight a little bit about how this cloud compute platform will redefine Ukraine as a country, exporting country of agricultural products in the world. What we see is that the most valuable asset Ukraine has here is, first of all, brains, and second is the black soil. So we have to be very careful with the brains. We have to be very careful with the black soil. So how are we going to do that? If you are go and produce agriculture products with only a short term in mind, you will slowly deteriorate the black soil. And that's what we don't want, because we want to hand it over to the next generation. We need to hand it over to the next generation. It's our obligation. So in order to avoid that, in order to make sure that Ukraine is able to export to the European Union, according to Association Treaty, we actually have to ensure that these products are according to this Association Treaty and all the requirements that are written down. Also, we know that the Association Treaty is a set of requirements at the moment, but we also know that this set of requirements will be expanded, like carbon footprint of a kilo of potatoes to be imported to Europe. That needs to be recorded, and it needs to be done in a trustworthy way. So what can farmers expect from this cloud compute platform at the moment? First of all, they can start smart farming. For smart farming, you need a lot of devices, you need a lot of sensors to make sure that you know the moisture of the field, even up to 1 meter deep, because the roots go there. You need to understand what is the health of the crops. You need to understand the chemical composition of the field continuous through the year. All these sensors need to be managed. The tools to do so live in the cloud. And the farmer doesn't need to have knowledge of those tools. He can just consume it like you consume the tools from your phone. Second is, all these devices, they generate so much data. What is the farmer going to do with those data? We don't want him to buy servers, get a data specialist, and because it's not going to work. First of all, typically, it is too costly. These tools, the data analysis tools, live in the cloud, and they can go and consume it from the cloud. Then you have all this data. You know the quality of the data. You have to do something with it. You need to use the data as supportive to the decision that the farmer is going to make. Should I go and irrigate big time tomorrow or not? Or tonight? What is the health of my crop now? Should I use pesticides, herbicides, whatever? Should I do it for the whole field? Or if your neighbor has issues, should you also go and proactively go and use herbicides, pesticides? This is all the decisions that the farmers are making on a daily basis. AI, machine learning, are the tools that reside in the cloud and that support these decisions. It will make the farmers' decisions more clever. It will be more spot on the situation that we have. And then at the end, of course, if you're going to export or import into Europe your kilo of potatoes, then it needs to be guaranteed that it's being produced on a proper way. If the farmer wants to get the extra price because he did super his best to be ecological, how do you make sure that that's very clear in that parcel or the truck of potatoes? And this is why you have blockchain services that all reside in the cloud. So if you look at the farmer, he can leverage all the value-added services that live in the cloud, use it for his farm to become a smart farm, and help Ukraine to become an even better exporter to Europe, but as well get higher prices for the products. I would actually like to conclude, and I want to invite everybody of you, please look at cloud not as infrastructure. Look at it as the platform that your organization, even if you're a startup, doesn't matter. I think even startups sometimes are better at it. But leverage the value that you can get from this platform to make your organization stronger. At the end, that is what's making Ukraine a better place.
Thank you, Jan-Peter. Actually, you partially shocked me, because you know why? When I think about Microsoft, I certainly don't link that division, between cloud and black soil. So, personally, I appreciate. I hadn't expected. Yeah, you're positively surprised. Moreover, it ties pretty well with what Nadia said about significant part of people who are unemployed. They don't believe in tech. So basically, what you are picturing that in 5-10 years, successful farmer is living at black soil and in cloud together and using flying cars, Sebastian, right? And 5G, certainly, because otherwise they won't be working. Thank you. Please, Bill.
Thank you. Well, and thank you. And I want to thank the hosts for inviting me to come from Silicon Valley here to talk about the future. That's kind of cool. I've been thinking about the future for a long time, so I really do appreciate that. So, good morning. Dobry jutro. Great to be here. Oh, come on. But delighted and honored to be here. So, I've been thinking about the future for a long time. So starting, well, I guess as a kid, we've all started but thought about the future as a kid. And then fast forward, when I was in graduate school at Stanford, someone said something very significant about the future. They said, if you want to predict the future, you should invent it. And I thought, oh, that's cool. So I was in business school at the time. I thought I was going to go into business. But instead, what happened was I wound up starting up a startup company. And, this is a long time ago. This is before it was fashionable for Stanford graduates to start startup companies. But back then, there was this really interesting new technology. The next new big thing was this thing. It was called the PC. Thanks to IBM and Microsoft, there was this opportunity to invent the future with this PC thing. So I started a software company. Our company was arguably the first app developer. So we developed fintech apps for the PC way back then. But so I became a serial entrepreneur and wound up restarting, co-founding 4 different software companies, 2 of which went public. And then after my second public IPO, I switched over, I became a venture capitalist. So as a venture capitalist, you're paid every day to try to figure out what's the next big thing. That's, what we're supposed to figure out. So we're constantly trying to figure out the next big thing. And so now fast forward to today, it's 2021. Here we are, we're supposed to be talking about the future. What's the next big thing? Well, guess what? With all due respect, it's not 5G. It's not the cloud. It's not even AI. Because the reality is, everything is the next big thing. Everything is trending. The really cool thing about today, partly thanks to 5G and the cloud, okay, and digital and AI, everything is trending. The next big thing is everywhere. Right? So we've got fintech, and we've got ed tech, and we've got ag tech, and we've got prop tech, and we've got clean tech, and we've got health tech. What am I forgetting? Is there anything? I mean, we've got gov tech, we've got food tech, we've got health tech. Everything is trending. There isn't just a big thing. Everything is an opportunity for you. We got AI, thanks to AI, right? We have smart homes, and we have smart buildings, and we have smart cars, and we have smart factories, and we have smart streets, and we have smart cities, right? Everything.
Smart people?
Well, okay, please. Okay, understand I'm coming from the United States. I'm not speaking about Ukraine, but, speaking of smart, if an engineer out here can figure out how can we engineer a smart politician? Anybody? It would be great if we could engineer a smart politician. So Elon Musk is working on this. He's got this thing called Neuralink. He's trying to implant something in your brain. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. But okay, so so the next big thing, it's not 5G, it's not cloud, it's not AI. The next big thing is global and local innovation. The next big thing is the entrepreneurial mindset. That's the next big thing. And this is, this is Nadia's point. We've got all these platform technologies, but who cares? They're no good unless you guys figure out how to turn them into something valuable. And so what I want to touch on briefly now is how innovation has changed, how the future has changed from the old days, right? In the old days, we thought about innovation as somebody invented something new, right? So they invented the light bulb, and you heard about the light bulb, and you waited around until the light bulb came here, right? And then somebody invented the car, and eventually the car came here. And then, somebody invented computers, and eventually computers came here. And then somebody invented the cell phone. Who invented the cell phone? Well, in any case. And eventually the cell phone got here. And so the history of innovation was always somebody invented some technology somewhere, and eventually it diffused around the world, and we took advantage of it. But now the world is different. Innovation is totally different now. Think about the new successful companies. So Apple, for example. What did Apple invent? What did Apple invent? Apple did not invent the microcomputer. Apple did not invent the mouse. Apple did not invent the graphical user interface. Apple did not invent the MP3 player. Apple did not invent the smartphone. What did Apple invent? They didn't invent anything. Google. What did Google invent? There was tons of search engines before Google came around. Facebook. What did Facebook invent? Facebook hasn't invented anything. Right? They didn't invent anything. But they became huge companies. How? Why? Because they innovated. And what's the secret to innovation? The secret to innovation is taking somebody else's technology, right? Like, 5G or cloud or whatever, right? The secret to innovation is you take somebody else's technology and then you develop some commercial product or service on top of it that meets a compelling need in your current locality. And if you're lucky, you're really good, that compelling need can be a global need, and you can go global. But you can go global from anywhere. You can go global from Ukraine, right? So now the question is, what does that mean for all of us and how we go forward into the future? So, stop thinking about, looking for other people to invent things, or stop thinking about trying to invent things yourself. Look around the world and figure out, what can you use that's out there? So for corporations, if there are any corporations in the audience, for corporations, it used to be that corporations thought that the way to invent the future was to hire a bunch of PhDs and, stick them in the basement and lock the door and tell them, go invent something, right? But that's a terrible idea. That's not the way you do it anymore. If you're a corporation, the way you innovate is you reach out around the world and you support entrepreneurs the way Microsoft does, right? You touch entrepreneurs all over the planet. You listen to their brilliant ideas, you support them, you nurture them, you develop them, and you might license their products, you might buy the company, you might actually advance the technology. But if you're a corporation, the future of innovation is about open innovation. It's not about figuring it out yourself. It's about looking around the world and finding the best ideas, the best technologies, the best business models, the best service models, and then figuring out how can I innovate those into my own products and services and create something powerful and special and valuable right here. And so when you're building a company, the other thing we've learned about innovation, when you're building a company, sort of the old model, the traditional corporate model, was, you had the big bosses, and the big bosses, they would hire a bunch of people to do what they told them to do, right? That's the way corporations were built. The big idea was you got the big bosses at the top, and they hire a bunch of young people at the bottom, and watch what they do, and if they make mistakes, you fire them, and if they don't make mistakes, you promote them. And so, you create these corporations that are incredibly calcified because nobody wants to make a mistake. They know they can't, right? But if you want to build a company today that's going to be successful, you don't hire a bunch of followers to do what you tell them to do. If you're going to build a company today, you've got to hire leaders. You've got to hire people who can lead. And you've got to hire people with an entrepreneurial mindset, with the idea that I'm going to try a bunch of stuff. I know some of it's going to fail, but I'm going to try and learn. And only by trying a bunch of stuff and learning can I accelerate the success of my business. If you're in a culture where trying and failing is rejected and you get fired, you're never gonna make progress. But if you create a culture with the entrepreneurial mindset that says, let's explore, let's be open, let's experiment, let's try, and sometimes we'll make mistakes, sometimes we fail, but we'll learn, then we'll make progress. So, the grand conclusion, in conclusion, the great news here is that you no longer have to wait for technology to make its way across the world to you. It's here, thanks to these guys and a bunch of other players. It's up to the entrepreneurs and the innovators to create the next interesting tech, the next interesting solution. So the next big thing is the entrepreneurial mindset and global innovation. And you guys, you have the tools here in Ukraine to do whatever you want to do. So that's my point of view.
Thank you. And I realize that I'm disturbing a little bit the flow of the conversation. I think you raised a very, very good point. And in this room, we have a brilliant example of a company that is actually using the tech. It's actually a local company, Ukrainian company, that is using the best technology that you can find on the planet to innovate, to do something meaningful for the customers. And the company has a stand over there. It's called Smart Business. And please go and have a look at them. They are one of our 1,200 partners in Ukraine. And they are innovative like hell.
Kostas, surprise us.
Fantastic, thank you. So I guess some of you may wonder what is a guy that represents a tobacco company doing in a forum about technology and sitting, in a panel with tech companies and venture capitalists. Yes? So, no? You're not wondering. One is not wondering. So, and indeed it's a good question, because if you look in the past, for almost 100 years, the business model of, tobacco companies has been the same. You produce cigarettes, which are harmful. You sell them to point of sales. People buy them. Simple. Nevertheless, around 20 years ago, Philip Morris started looking at the problem of smoking, because there are around 1 billion smokers in the world, and this number basically doesn't go down. And obviously, everybody knows that the product is harmful. And therefore, started investing in alternatives, in technology that has the potential to reduce the harm which is caused by smoking cigarettes. So there is a big R&D center today where it's based in Switzerland, and if you roll back, if you take it over 20 years, you have more than 900 scientists, engineers, designers, and so on and so forth. And you have in more than 80 markets products that they are based on technology and science and replacing traditional cigarettes. If you see what's going on in Ukraine, we launched this product back in 2015, And right now, more than 1.6 million people are using these products and have switched to IQOS, to this type of products that have the potential to reduce the harm compared to cigarettes. And basically, half of our revenues are coming from, a product which has been based in technology and science. Now, again, in 2016, if you put a few years later, we made also another decision. We said, although we are the leaders in this business, in the leaders in our category, we decided that perhaps the best idea is one day to stop producing and selling cigarettes. And we announced that we will do that in many countries in the next 10 to 15 years. So in reality, and this was all done because of technology and science. So an amazing disruption is in such a, let's call it, traditional industry that has been the same for the last 100 years. So this is what I want to say for the beginning, and perhaps later I would also like to discuss what could make Ukraine as a more attractive destination in terms of global investments in technology, manufacturing, and R&D.
Thank you. And Kostas, considering that you've already mentioned, I suggest you start our second part in terms of Ukrainian context, in terms of tech and possibilities which tech could bring to Ukraine, and what is the role of various stakeholders, including state and regulators and business. So,
thank you.
Your time.
Excellent. So, look, when we launched in IQOS in 2015, soon later we started considering what about, investment in Ukraine, not only in local manufacturing of this product, but also creating an export hub for a number of other markets, but also creating an R&D center here, a research and development center here, etc. The thing is that Ukraine has been very attractive for a number of reasons, and I can testify that myself, that I have worked in 6 countries and I'm here for the last 1.5 years. You have the talent, you have the qualifications, you have the cost, you have the location. But this we started discussing back in 2018-19. But if you see today, we have a factory here in Kharkiv, and we employ more than 3,000 people, but we still produce their cigarettes. Nonetheless, we wanted, obviously, to invest much more. And we are talking about an investment which exceeds $100 million, obviously, and we have done this type of investment in a number of European and other countries. And we believe that if we start being the leaders in the field, obviously, our competitors will follow. Nevertheless, the thing is that one thing that prevents Ukraine attract this type of investment is the lack of predictability, which a lot of people have known about. And representing a multinational corporation and also, let's say, a global investor at the same time is always something that sometimes is even more important than the talent, the cost, and the location. So what happened here is that the regulators decided one day to increase taxes for this type of products by 320%. So obviously, all the plans that we had stopped. So this is the main obstacle, if you wish, for major investments in Ukraine from a global perspective. When you have a big global investor and considering where is the right location to build manufacturing capabilities for technological products, for R&D, etc., you are always considering the predictability of regulation and taxation, etc. So
Kostas,
this is what
just a sec. You know what? An idea came to my mind. We have to connect somehow Silicon Valley, friend of ours, Bill, with those politicians and the tech which you've mentioned, which decided to increase, you said, taxes at what extent?
320%.
In Ukraine?
Yes.
Wow. And no investment afterwards, certainly?
Well,
from you and competitors?
Then I had difficulty to convince my headquarters to invest. Let's call it like that.
So, you see, Bill, we badly need that tech...
Smart politician?
Yeah, helping. Please.
No, I mean, this is what I wanted to say, and I would finish with that on the topic. So there are a lot of benefits, as I explained before. Nevertheless, there are also obstacles, and I guess many of the panelists here understand this, the lack of predictability and also the customized approach on investment. Because, of course, there are laws that they say you have certain tax incentives, etc., but if you are interested in, as a global investor, to invest more than $50 million or more than $100 million, and you also come together with your industry, the rest of the industry, then obviously you need to have someone at the top that would customize incentives for you to invest here rather than in other locations. So predictability and customization, I would say, is what is missing on top of the huge benefits of talent, qualifications, location, and still cost.
Thank you.
Okay, so you would like my point of view on what Ukraine should do, what it should focus on, yeah. So, and so, back to my my original theme. Actually, when I go around the world, I get the wonderful opportunity to visit innovation ecosystems all over the planet, and every place I go, the politicians, the entrepreneurs, the investors want to figure out, how do we make this more like Silicon Valley? It used to be that they said, how could we make Silicon Valley here? And now people are smart enough to know you can't replicate Silicon Valley. You shouldn't try to replicate Silicon Valley. But now they want to become more like Silicon. They want to be more innovative. And so frequently the politicians or the planners or whatever will say, okay, let's think traditional economics, comparative advantage. What do we have that other people don't? How do we leverage our comparative advantage? Blah, 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 blah. Forget about it. Forget about it, right? I mean, if somebody all long ago and far away in Silicon Valley said, how do we create an innovation ecosystem here? Nobody would have come up with semiconductors, right? They would not have come up. Pure accident. And in fact, fast forward now to today, hardly anybody in Silicon Valley makes semiconductors. They're all made in Taiwan and China, but that's a different story. But so my recommendation in every ecosystem is, in the words of a very famous politician, let 100 flowers blossom. Does anybody know who said that? Anybody?
Kennedy,
no. Who?
Kennedy, no. Kennedy, no. Mao?
Not, that's good. Kennedy, no. Chairman Mao. That famous capitalist, Chairman Mao, said, let 100 flowers blossom. He had a very different idea in mind behind that, but the metaphor is key. The metaphor is key. Don't pretend that you can engineer an innovation ecosystem by picking winners and choosing technologies. The way you create an innovation ecosystem is you imbue the ecosystem with the entrepreneurial mindset. You say, look, don't work for the government, don't work for big corporations, invent the future. Go figure out what you can make or innovate or create that will solve an interesting problem or exploit an interesting opportunity. Our friend who invented WhatsApp, Ukrainian, who said, he didn't say, boy, what the world needs is a messaging app. There were plenty of messaging apps. But he said, I got a different way of doing a message. Maybe it'll work. And so, $19 billion later, how much of the 19 billion came back here? Does anybody know? I'm afraid.
I suppose close to zero.
Sorry. Okay. So, but if you build the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, if you give entrepreneurs here the opportunity to create a $19 billion global success story, then that's the way you build the ecosystem. That's the way you kick it off. I doubt, probably it's not in messaging, you know, maybe it's in IT, I don't know. Maybe it's in ag tech, I don't know. I mean, but you can't pick a winner in advance. You gotta let the brain power of Ukraine think about opportunities and then support the ones that seem to get traction. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. And by the way, Bill, 90 bill is half of our annual GDP. That's a lot for Ukraine.
And that didn't include the stock, by the way.
Yeah.
So the question, as I heard it, was what is needed to create an environment where Ukraine can partly become Silicon Valley, where Ukrainian companies can become more competitive? And there is a lot. I mean, we can talk about it for a week. And I think everybody here has pretty clear ideas about it. Let me focus on what I said before. I believe it is really important that there will be proper cloud legislation. That is one of the things that will open up an extra toolbox for all the startups. It will open up extra fuel for everyone that want to become more competitive and want to grow faster. I think this is super important. The second point here, if you talk about cloud legislation, you talk about data. Data is very important. And it's totally understandable that some data cannot leave the country and others, they can. The thing is that this needs to be clear. And we need legislation about the data as well, how it's going to be used. So if we look at the West, Europe has GDPR. In terms of generating trust of the tech that is created here, in terms of generating trust of the tech that is deployed here, thinking about the tech that also the government is deploying, GDPR and security is paramount. I think in terms of the time, I will stop now. Okay. Then also we realized already like 10 years ago that the power of the technology that I just was describing is so immense that we have to think about how do we keep it proper? How do we really keep the planet a good place to live? And we came up with a couple of principles. And I would like to share that with you, because those principles actually made me think when I heard them for the first time, and I thought, this is really a good set of principles. And we really have to start to think about it. And I would like to ask you to think about it afterwards, but also get into conversations with your friends, with your colleagues, etc. Because it is really important for us, for our children. So one of the principles, let me start with fairness. Technology should be able to treat each person equally. And we all know that facial recognition, for instance, is having different hit rates. Hit rates is not a good word, but it has different rates of solution for women and for men. So for men, I think it is like 90% accurate. For women, it's 85%. But if you then go and look at people with a color, it can even go down to 35%. This is not a fair technology. So we have to work on the algorithms to make sure that everybody is being treated fairly by this technology. The second one is, and I think a couple of colleagues already mentioned it, it should be reliable. If you have a doctor that is using modern tech during surgery, you cannot have halfway the surgery. The tech stops. Augmented reality glasses, they stop. And you cannot tell the family of the patient that just died, sorry guys, the tech was out, right? So that's why we need good connectivity, but also we need to have reliable tech. The second is it needs to be safe. You cannot hack it, because the moment that it's hacked, you lose trust. The third, it needs to be private. It needs to be secure, so people start to keep having trust in technology, or even grow the trust. Then it should be inclusive, meaning that everybody should be able to have access to the technology. We cannot have oblasts here in Ukraine because of connectivity, because of whatever reasons. The children don't have access to modern tools, so they cannot get the education that they need. And then it needs to be, I have two more things that are a little bit more high level. It needs to be transparent. And what actually does that mean? If you really think about this, AI, machine learning, to be transparent. If you think about the app on your phone, are you aware what that app is doing? Is it transparent what data the app is using? Think about it. Technology should be transparent, and technology companies have the responsibility to share exactly what it's doing. The last point is accountability. It means that the one who's creating this tech should be accountable. So those are the principles that we have been defining. And I think, given the cloud, the power of cloud, given the power of the human ingenuity and the creativity, and if we take into account these principles, I believe we're going to have a very bright future.
Okay, probably in English, I try. So first, probably I will continue from commercial sector, then I move to regulation, and then probably something about state ownership and state-owned enterprises. So first of all, from the management side and from the business side. First, what I would like to mention that when we do a lot of digital transformation, what we experience that the core barrier created by middle management. And I would like to a little bit disappointed you, dear middle managers, because your age is finished. So it's just a couple of years when the middle management is needed. So please find the way. Or you move up, or you move to entrepreneurial business, or you just specialized in very narrow, ideas which you further developed, and you will be very valuable for your company because you do that. So that's number one issue. Number two issue, when when company came to us and asked, could you make a digital transformation, and that's not an honor of the business, we usually refuse from that. Why? Because if the owner don't care about how the new business model will looks like, so it is no possibility to change it at all. Probably CEO is the best case if the CEO is like a partner of the shareholders or something like that. But still, so please, if you are CIO, CFO, biz dev, any kind of that type of middle management who would like to transform your business, and you do not have a sponsor who is really drive that transformation, so please, that's not a success case. Please change that internally first. Third, what I would like to mention, that's about the try to sit in manufacturing, because you expect that you will stay with your knowledge without any exchange, any changes of your skill set until your pension. First of all, question about pension, but the second part, it's about the, when we will have a smart manufacturing, so what you plan to do? Do you know how to manipulate with the robotics technology, or do you know how to, work with analytics from the IoT, or you know how to improve the algorithm of artificial intelligence, or how to execute, twins, digital twins, because your constructors or your innovator just provide you with the digital twins, and later on you have to manufacture that. How to do that? You look in the supper and see that. So my experience in Ukробronprom, sorry, that's my emotions, that's why. Because I was responsible for 35 R&D centers, 16.5 thousand engineers and constructors, and a lot of great people. And I'm very upset if they really will not have a use in their facilities, because unfortunately that people already quite aging. But of course, part of them, like probably 20% of them, they know that supper exists, but they don't believe in that. They said, oh no, paper and the pencil, that's better way. So 30% said, sometimes I learned it. I said, when? When I studied in Polytechnical School. Cool. When? 20 years ago. Nice. Why don't you use it? Because my boss previous didn't ask that. And that's why whole my life I never used that Supper. So Supper, that's a specific software for developing of the engineering tool, So it means that they bought something because CIO is very driving, that CIO came and say, oh, let's buy Siemens tools or let's buy Microsoft tools or something like that. So they have all of them, but they don't use it. Because, skills has to be repeatable, learning, constantly developing. If you're not developed that, so you're dead. Today in that world. Next, move to the Ukraine. So Ukraine, it's interesting that since 2017, we work with IMD in cooperation to do the Digital Competitiveness Index evaluation for Ukraine. And Ukraine moved from 60th place, 60, to 54, finally. Because in 2019, we back to 60th place. So what is driving us up? Talents. We are 37th place in the world, 37 to 34 from the talent pool. It means scientific concentration, technological knowledge, math, IT knowledge, a lot of engineering knowledge. So all of that we have. What is driving us down? English language, because our scientists, unfortunately, cannot speak from the stage. Second, infrastructure. Nice experience regarding DIA. How many people in regions can use DIA? Especially you can experience that when we had starting COVID and all families in villages has to start learn online. Nice speed of internet, thanks to absence of 3G. I'm not talking about 5G. Second, where is the planchette, or how to say, the device from government to support families, poor families? I can give example of Oman. They have already 3 wave of providing that, the devices for. And third, what about crypto security? So cybersecurity for that people. They never learned that. It means that even they start to go with the financial asset in online, they immediately grab it. Probably you saw that if you are in the messengers constantly in Telegram, please be aware that it is new fraud in finance asset. Please be aware about that. And if you read the details, the proposal is really stupid. Like, please give us a PIN code of something, or please, you are the winner, and that's like a phishing mails, all of that. Okay, so the question about education. Yes, DIA do that, but DIA do that only for the people who has a smartphone. Next, how many people have in Ukraine smartphone? Yes, better than in Central Eastern Europe. We are better in that case. We are number 1 in blockchain. Do you know that? In blockchain, in which way? Share of people who has an asset in cryptocurrency. But blockchain is not only cryptocurrency. That's about the reliability. That's about the fixed registry with the ICT. I saw Tatiana know that topic very well. So it's a lot like not only like one way of usage of and utilization of the technology. It's also about the more widening approach. And now I would like just to touch some point which we investigate when we do that, when we did that research regarding digital economy and Ukraine as the service powerhouse type. So we are in the 3rd stage because we have a very skillful people. We are almost at the end of the scale, so we are close to, like as India, you probably know that it's very skillful people like US, like Singapore and others, but we have a very low consumption of digital products. And when we talk about, okay, what about our IT? Why they're working outside? Who has to be the consumer or clients of that IT business in Ukraine? Big business, not a small, not medium. Big business, government, right? And only that, consumers. So, and if that 2 guys are not interested in the IT business of Ukraine, yes, it's not possible for them to develop. So, so summary of that, first, for Ukrainian government, I think crucial point is to build infrastructure for not depending on where you are, in the million city or in a small village and so on, just to take that leap or gap between the very rich people and the people who is working outside. And a very nice example of that single market of Europe, who just denominate that based on the building the infrastructure similar for South countries and for the North country. Second, it's of course to create the new policies regarding cybersecurity, regarding what type of critical technologies we would like to apply, about the topic of data protection, about cybersecurity, IP, intellectual property rights. That's all connecting to the digital economy. And of course, then last but not least, it's about education. So education, like already was mentioned also by Bill, so the core education has to be not like we, in previous industrial revolution, we used like a knowledge for some kind of professional type, but more about entrepreneurial experience, about critical thinking, about how I can, maintain all kind of skills which I have and build based on that new profession. Interesting statistics that among 3 students who just started this year, 2 don't know what kind of profession will be. They even don't know what kind of profession they will obtain at the end of their education. At the end, in 5 years, So it means that there are no professionals. That means that you just obtain different type of skills, and after that you just try to understand, okay, I have a strength in that area, so probably I can try that. I have strengths here and here, probably it's new upstairs. So, and you just give further. So probably one of the core point for business, I would like to mention that one of the worst point in our digital competitiveness index on the 62nd place, that's in IT integration. IT integration, that's a topic about, like our lovely customers usually said, could you help somehow digital transformation to somehow manage our zoo of technologies? That zoopark technology. Yeah, so because all companies grab a lot of technology within their history, and it's interesting that they didn't like to spend a lot of money to integrate and upgrade them. And now, when they have to go outside for competitiveness, for worldwide or international competitiveness, they immediately feel that, okay, the speed and productivity of their process is very, very low, and we need to do something with that. So that's the core pay attention what we have to obtain. And regarding the government, the last example what I would like to give, that's my experience as the head of strategy committee in board of ProZorro Sales. Probably you know that company. Who knows ProZorro Sales? Oh, nice. That's a state-owned enterprise. And who is providing the selling of state goods to just the private market to market. And I would like to give you 2 examples. One example, that's a license of mining gas, 2017 years. You know how many companies had a license for that activity? 39. Do you know how much time they spent to renovate their license? 1 year. Anybody knows about how it was? Nobody knows, because it was black market completely. So that was a relationship between some peoples. Nobody knows how much it will cost, what it is about, and so on. Results, in 2019, ProZorro Sales started the auction. So officially, we mentioned the auction for that license of mining, gas. We had one auction was 8 times more than it was the starting price, 8 times more. And overall earning for Ukraine was 1.5 billion hryvnias, just for you to understand. And all of that history you can see in the website of the ProZorro Sales, and you can really go to there if you would like to buy something, rent something from government, you can see what government have. Another example, it is also about the forest and others you can see, but crucial point here is that example of the ProZorro Sales. That type of digitalization of government or digital cooperation with government has to be in place in Ukraine, because they try to transparently demonstrate what actually we have after Soviet Union heritage, and how much it really cost, because that's a market approach in that. The problem here is when the government tried to manipulate all kind of industry. So we have to build market and build ecosystem around that market, like Prozoro sells, because Prozoro is just an engine for auction. Around Prozoro, it is 42 private marketplace who is selling that assets. 42, that's ecosystem. They are not earning, all of that. Compared to other systems, which you probably know, so I don't like to mention that, when the government tried to monopolize for whole industry, where is the place for the market, for the private market? No places. So smart implementation of digital transformation, discussing with the market, make it like an ecosystem, engage all kind of business partners on that market. That's a way how the government has to make a digital transformation for their digital economy. Thank you.
So I don't know really how to continue here, because there have been so many excellent things said here in terms of education and innovation and entrepreneurship. But just from our sort of perspective in the world of sort of mobile communications, it is truly a collaborative industry. If you look at a radio-based station, our main product to create these fantastic connectivity technologies, we have suppliers, specialist companies that are specialists in very specific technologies. Maybe more than 100 of those companies are supplying components to one base station, and they are from nearly 50 different countries. So when some governments, not here in Ukraine, but when some governments come and say we need to localize, we need to have our own 5G system, they don't really understand how global the technology industry is, and that you need to find your space in this world. And I just would like to piggyback on what has been said here. I think that the key value of these fantastic technologies is, of course, how to use them. And one of the beautiful things with cloud, internet, and connectivity, and so on, is, of course, that competence and knowledge is ubiquitous. It's available all the time, everywhere. So, as Bill said, the key thing is entrepreneurial skill set and innovation, how to use that. You don't need to reinvent a 5G base station or reinvent a car, but how can you use these technologies to create something new? And I think there was also a comment here that with these technologies, also with a digital economy as well, there are really no physical borders. So don't think Ukraine, think the world, right? Because if you develop something here that works successfully here, it can become a global blockbuster. So the opportunities are unlimited, truly. My only, I think, direct recommendation to Ukraine and to the government, if I'm allowed to do that, I think the question was stated like that, and please take it just from a commercial company here, but we talked about the education, and we talked to sometimes the lack also of access to these technologies, right? And what Bill talked about, that you should use what is available, right? Yes, but then it has to be available as well. So if you don't have semiconductors, if you don't have connectivity, you don't have a PC, you don't have internet and these fantastic cloud platforms, it's difficult to build something, right? So, and here it comes back to the specifics of our industry, because this is the mobile industry, the national mobile industry is heavily regulated. You need to have a license to put up a radio base station and to create a network. And many countries, they charge a large amount for those licenses. And when I meet the local operators here in Ukraine, they are keen to build 5G, but they're also afraid about the large upfront payment they need to make to the government to get access to these technologies, or to get access to the frequencies. So what I would recommend to the government is to recognize the value of making these fantastic technologies available for all these oblasts and villages and rural areas and so on, so that they can flourish and build and grow those flowers and everything on top of those technologies. And instead of seeing spectrum licenses as an opportunity to charge a big tax fee up front. Put requirements instead on the operators. Maybe give the frequencies free of charge and say that within 5 years you need to cover 98% of the population or 99% of the roads and so on. So, and I think that would be the best thing to create the next wave of growth and competitiveness of Ukraine.
Thank you, Sebastian. We're pretty close towards finishing, at least for now, this panel. There are a lot of interesting questions, guys, to all of you there. I really enjoyed one. A person asked us to imagine that we are a chef, you know, of high cuisine, like 3 Michelin stars. And from each of you, one additive to recipe, one recipe, let's say, or one feature of a recipe. How to help Ukraine to introduce tech here in order to prosper and get into global context, as Sebastian has mentioned, much better than we are now. You've said a lot. Let's conclude in that way. One recipe, one feature. Thank you.
Well, is what I said before, predictability.
Thank you.
Okay. My single special ingredient, okay, is celebrate entrepreneurship. That means educate in the entrepreneurial mindset and skill set, reward successful entrepreneurs, feature them, showcase them, celebrate them, make entrepreneurship the next big thing, not government service or corporate service or whatever. Celebrate entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, now you already said everything. I would put into the bowl education, international education, language. I would put into the bowl entrepreneurship, creativity, but we also know that Ukrainians are well known for entrepreneurship and creativity. So we have a lot already there, but make sure, stimulate it, right? And then I would also put in the bowl creating an environment that will be good for startups and the next phase of startups from a legislation point of view. Create a solid and a stable country. Then I would mix it. And I don't think we have to do much more than that, because it will be an awesome cake.
Thank you.
Okay, from one point I would put partnership as the culture, because we are very much compete with each other, you know, and currently no one from the industry cannot survive until industry agreed about what will be the full model. So partnership, build ecosystem, partnership, and so on. And according to that, starting point can be social responsibility. I give just one advertising from the stage that next week we announced the woman project in regions for the active woman, for policy woman, for political woman, to increase their digital literacy. So if you are interested in that, please take me a message or something like that. So partnership number one. Number two, that's about forget about government and look international competition. Because I saw many listen from the big middle-sized corporations, small business sides, government, a strange policy. It is mistake. It is a look on the cryptocurrency industry, on the gambling industry, on the IT industry. How the government can influence on them? They even don't understand what type of that industries, you know? So create some kind of new industry, new innovations, and go global. Because, you know, as soon as you will be globally competitive, government will listen you. They will do whatever you need, you know, as soon as you will be a stronger voice. Thank you.
Very good. No, I think it's it's a great thing to see actually that many foreigners are here today, and that is thanks to that the borders are open. I just wish for Ukraine to continue to have open borders and to continue to embrace global collaboration and continue also to make technology available for everyone in the country.
Thank you. Well, at least to my taste, that cake tastes delicious. Thank you. Appreciate it highly. Thank you very much, speakers. We're great.